and welcome to my 7th Dragon 3 Code VFD review. A few quick things before we get started. I released a preview video on May 31st, and I would recommend you watch that after this one if you find that you want more details on certain things. Chances are that I went into more details on those topics in the preview video because I'm going to skim over those during this review because I don't want to repeat myself, because chances are I'm going to talk a lot during this. You don't need to hear me talk more than I need to. Trust me. The second thing is that I'm going to avoid making the same mistake I made during my preview, and that mistake was that I called the game 7th Dragon 3 Code VDF, which is the incorrect title. It is Code VFD. So to eliminate all possibility of screwing that up again, I'm just going to refer to the game as 7th Dragon. Yes, and thank you, Sega, for being a good sport about it. I appreciated your quirky and witty comments. So the basic general premise of 7th Dragon is that there are dragons and there are humans and they do not get along, and it is up to you to form a dragon slaying team that will go and destroy all of the dragons and destroy the greatest and mightiest of dragons so that humanity can live in peace. I managed to wrap up 7th Dragon in 46 hours, and I believe I did all that I could do in the game. I did every side quest, talked to every character as many times as I could, defeated many a dragon, did all the dungeon crawling, did all the side content, aka side quests, and I'm pretty sure that's about all you can do, excluding post-game content. And yeah, I did all of that in 46 hours. I also played on standard difficulty. There's a standard and a casual, and you can flip between them on the fly. I played all standard, so I'm assuming though if you played on casual, you would be able to finish the game sooner than I did. So yeah, good, I would say, generally 40 to 60-ish hours is what you can expect to play, depending on how you play and what you want to do and all that awesome stuff. 7th Dragon is a JRPG, and like I said in my preview, it is unlike any other JRPG that I've ever played, and I've played many a JRPG in my day, and there are a few reasons for this, and I'll get into those really quick, like right now. Right now sound good? Okay, let's do this right now. So awkward person. The most notable way that 7th Dragon differs from JRPGs that I've played is the whole party system. Typically like you're the hero and you go out on this epic quest, and in this quest you recruit people who want to like fight with you for the same ultimate goal of saving so-and-so or saving the world or whatever the hell it is. In 7th Dragon though, you create the party from the get-go. And what I mean by that is, you boot up the game and you go through a few things and it's like, hey, create your party member. And so you have to choose the gender, the appearance, which of 7 classes you want those characters to be. And then that's it, man. They're just kind of along for the ride. They really have no dialogue to speak of. They have no personal stories. They don't have much of anything to offer other than their fighting skills, which is okay because there are some very interesting NPCs that carry the story along, but I'll go into that a little bit later. But for me, that was definitely the biggest thing I had to get used to, was fighting alongside these characters for 46 hours, but never really getting to know them. So what I found happening was that I would kind of give them personalities of my own, because based off of their appearance, and also you get to choose the voice that these characters have. So based off of their appearance and their voice, they kind of form their own little personality in your head. So, there's that. Anyway. 7th Dragon is also different in the sense that although it is a JRPG, you don't really get to explore new cities and towns and villages during the game. You will visit new locations, but it's not like there's a sprawling, huge overworld map where you traverse through a forest and you emerge and there's a brand new little village you've never explored with tons of side quests and new items to buy. Instead, the majority of your home-based operations will be located in your headquarters, which is in Tokyo, and I'm keeping this spoiler-free as possible. And that's where you will do your weapon upgrades, your item upgrades, where you will buy items, where you will sell things, where you will interact with most of the NPCs. And so that was, I would have liked to have seen more cities and towns and villages. That said, I know the story now, and so I guess it kind of makes sense as to why those weren't included. It would have been nice though, because there are some cool places that you do get to go to, and it would have been nice to have seen more dynamic locations in terms of where people live. There, that was spoiler free. Awesome. Finally, and I'm not even sure if this last point totally applies, but the majority of the game is dungeon crawling, fighting enemies through certain levels and defeating bosses and that kind of cool shit. That said, there are moments where you will have downtime where you can do side quests, talk to NPCs, upgrade your gear, do whatever you want. You do have that downtime as well. So there's not a lot of story fluff, I guess is what I'm trying to get at, like in, you know, other RPGs where it's like a lot of story, a lot of dialogue. There are moments like that, and I'll get into that more in depth in a little bit, but the majority of the game is action. You're not going to have hours of just fluff where you're wandering and talking to people and exploring, unless you're doing a whole bunch of side quests at one time. So yay! Combat in 7th Dragon is pretty self-explanatory. It's a turn-based JRPG, so if you've ever played one of those before, I'm pretty sure you're very well versed in what combat in 7th Dragon is like. The only quirk I can think of that could be worth mentioning is the ability to use your inactive teammates to help you in battle. Now, your inactive teammates are those party members that you've created that you are not using at the moment, so they're just kind of chilling out in the background, and during each fight, you can see them on the bottom screen of your 3DS, and they're there for you to use and abuse as you'd like. So some party members will lower the enemy's offense, their defense. Sometimes they'll cleanse your current party out there fighting of status ailments. And if you're patient and you wait long enough, you can use all 9 party members in one turn. And that's a really, really cool thing to do, especially during boss fights. And yeah, you will need... I didn't use my inactive teammates a lot during the first half of the game because it really wasn't necessary, and it was a little, not easy, but I wasn't having difficulty with the combat. However, and I'll get into this in a little bit as well, the latter part of the game, the second half, you definitely will need to use your inactive teammates if you even want the chance at surviving. So it's a really fun way to mix up the combat, and so I think you will enjoy that system very much because I did. And everyone knows that everyone likes what I like, right? Nope. When it comes to the difficulty of 7th Dragon, you should know that the first half of the game, well for me the first 30 hours, cakewalk. The general enemies, I just skipped half the time. I used a thing called camouflage, so I didn't even have to deal with them because they weren't worth my time. Even the dragons that you fight, which are the little guys that are represented by purple heads on your screen, which are kind of like mini bosses of sorts. Yeah, no big deal. No, as long as you have the right team, that is, which is very important. I'll get to that in a second. But the true dragons, the big bosses you fight towards the end of the game, dude, it's like, you know, you're breezing through these enemies like it's no big deal, and then you get to one of those big motherfuckers and you're just looking up and you're like, I will take my punishment gladly, because this difficulty comes out of nowhere. It's like the difficulty spike for these guys just like up 1,000%, and you're like, where did this come from? I thought I was King Turtle shit now and destroying everything below me, and then you just get royally owned and your ass gets kicked and you spend hours trial and error, and it's just, oh god. This is a very raw topic for me, friends, because I just finished this game a couple days ago. So I had many frustrating moments. I yelled out I yelled out many awful words that I didn't even know could exist together in a sentence, but that's what I did. And the reward for defeating these bosses is very high, but the frustration level is just a little insane. It's just a little crazy, and it really does come out of nowhere. So in that sense, I can't help be a little irritated at that it's like all of a sudden this difficulty spike just boom out of nowhere, and you're like, okay, fine, like take me now, you know, kind of thing. But like I said earlier, I quickly found out too that a lot of my problems stem from the fact that I had a poorly constructed party. And what I'm saying is that I created a team of 3 characters, and each character was a different class, and individually the classes are great, but the combination of classes I put together, I think it was a duelist, a fortuner, and a rune knight, I believe was the other one, together, terrible. And so I was struggling really hard, and here's an example, against a boss, a very late game boss. And I spent a good hour and a half trying different combinations, you know, getting the boss's health whittled halfway, and then all of a sudden I would just get wiped out. And it was so frustrating for me, and I was getting ready to shut the 3DS and throw in the towel and be like, screw this, I'm done. But then I found a way to, long story short, get one of my other teams in that fight instead of the one that I was using. And this other team consisted of a banisher, a god hand, and a mage. I killed the boss within 5 minutes. That's how important it is to make sure you have a good team setup, or you will just be screwed. you're screwed. Screwed so hard. So yes, the takeaway from that whole long ramble is make sure you create teams that are worth your while and that will do what you need them to do. Because if not, the game is so unforgiving in that regard. It'll be like, oh, you can't beat me. You can't beat this boss with your current team setup. Tough shit. And then you just have to go and create another team and hope for a better combination. Or you can be like me and cheat your way through it and get your other team in there instead. So that's just a very crucial thing to know going into this game, especially the late game content. The first part of the game, you'll be fine. You don't even have access to all of those classes anyway, so you're very limited with what you can do. But as soon as the game opens up all the other classes, it starts getting pretty difficult. So yeah, just be careful about that. Before we wrap up, I just want to briefly touch on the story and the characters of 7th Dragon. Again, this will be spoiler free, so don't worry, I will not spoil anything for you because spoilers are essentially death reincarnated. Yeah, what? The story of 7th Dragon does start out a little bit slow, so that's something to be aware of. That said, it could even be intentional because you are supposed to be this character who just comes out of nowhere and you're just kind of thrown into the craziness. So you don't know what's going on, the character doesn't know what's going on. So it's like, oh, what's going on? Or something. But the story does start to pick up, especially after you start meeting NPCs. They really liven things up and really carry the story because, like I said, your party members don't say anything. So you have to rely on your NPCs to carry the story and to make things interesting. And on that note, I want to say that I think the NPCs were done very well. They're all very different and interesting. And they do a good job at bringing diversity to the game's story and its overall plot. I do want to say that I feel like the story and characters weren't given as much love as the dungeon crawling and combat. And again, you know, this is my first 7th Dragon game, so maybe that's just the norm. There were some consistency issues, kind of, sort of, like little things that I pick up on that other people might not care about, you might not care about, or you might. Anyway, so there's supposed to be a thing going down, like a really bad thing is happening, and you see like dark looming skies, and everyone's like, oh my god, this is terrible. Well, after that cutscene plays out, if you go to investigate that area, the sky is blue, people are happy. It's almost as if that cutscene never happened. And so for me, that kind of takes me out of immersion. It's like, but I thought stuff was going down, but now it's all happy and rainbowy and stuff. Like what? You know, so there's some stuff like that. There's also occasions where you will interact with NPCs or you will watch people interacting in a cutscene and some really important information relative to the characters and the story progression is revealed. However, the game doesn't really focus on that information very much. They'll touch on it like maybe once and then it's brought up maybe an hour or two later and you have to like think about it. Okay, wait, what was that? What happened? What does it mean? It's not like in other games where generally like that's a major plot point. It'll kind of be referenced throughout the game, so you kind of really get in your head and how big of a deal this is. With 7th Dragon, it's more like they mention it once and then they're done with it. And then if you don't remember it, you're kind of like racking your brain like, okay, why did they say that? What does it mean? Oh, and then you remember. Does that make sense? Without going into specifics, there is death in this game, and oftentimes when someone would die, I didn't really care. I was, you know, on like the emotional Richter scale, I was like a 1 out of 10 or something. Like it just didn't really faze me, and I'm someone who really bonds with characters, and I try to bond with them, but I think it's, again, because the majority of the game focuses on dungeon crawling and combat, and they don't focus too much on story and characters, which is kind of a shame, because I think that there's a lot of potential for a lot more depth with a lot of these characters. I thought there was a lot more they could have explored with them, but again, you know, by doing so, it could have turned this game into something it's not. It's not your typical JRPG. So I just want to say that these points aren't necessarily a mark against the game. It's just something that I, who happens to be a crazy person when it comes to story and characters, picked up on. It might not deter you from anything. You might not even notice it. But for those of you who are crazy like me, just something to have expectations for. Yeah. Whew, okay, so with all of that said, would I recommend that you, friends, purchase 7th Dragon 3 code VFD? And the answer is if you enjoy RPGs, if you enjoy dungeon crawling, if you enjoy exciting combat and personalization, and if you enjoy good games in general, then yes, absolutely, I would just, you know that going into it, it's not your typical JRPG. You're not going to spend 50 to 100 hours with, well, you could spend 50 hours. You're not going to probably spend like 70 to 100 hours with this crazy, dynamic, ever-changing story and these very vast, different, dynamic characters and stuff like that. It's just more of a straightforward dungeon crawling, action-y JRPG with a story that, like I said before, it does have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and some interesting characters, but it's not your like super like in-depth, super detailed, crazy, twisted story in a JRPG. Yeah. But if you're not too sure, there is a demo right now in the 3DS shop, so you can always check that out and make your own decision. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and if you have any questions, post them in the comments and I will do my best to answer them. I will be in Alaska when this video goes live, so I might be a little away from my computer, a little AFK, but I will do my best. Thank you so much! Bye!